I know I believe in angels. I believe in happiness. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see everybody. Thank you again, Platinum Planet Records, for that wonderful intro. And all of my fabulous guests. If you guys love the show and don't want to miss it again, please make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. It is the Caffeinated Cooper Show channel. Just ring the bell, click click subscribe, and you won't ever miss another show. If you would like to be able to, put in a birthday shout out or a hello to a military or police officer or civil worker that you know and you want to promote, go ahead and email us at ecooperstudios@gmail.com. That's ECOOPERSTUDIOS@gmail.com. And welcome to the news. Without any further ado, J.C. Schweingrouber, where are you? Hi.
Hey, Elizabeth, you happy now?
No, you're not up here with me. What did I do? Here you are. Okay. I was clicking too many buttons in the background. So you're with Vista Front Partners.
Yeah.
And how about we talk about Vista Front Partners up front, and then we'll get into what in the world happened this week.
Yeah, a lot happened this week. Vista Front Partners, that's I co-own this with a business partner of mine, Dr. Gary Stratton. And we have our office located in Frankfort, Kentucky. I operate also out of Virginia, and we help clients in multiple different states. What we do, we're an investment advisor services group. We have our clients' accounts held at Charles Schwab, and folks who need to have help with investing for no matter what it is, their first time investment in a Roth or an IRA, saving for their first time home, investing for retirement, any number of things. People can come to us, they can open up accounts with us, and we will manage their money for them for a fee. And that fee is based on assets under management. So if your assets grow, that's great. When you do better, I do better. When markets are down, then unfortunately I don't do as well either. So we have a vested interest in making sure as a fiduciary that our clients are well served and have a good strategy long term, regardless of short-term shocks in the market. So we do better as our clients do better, and that's our whole purpose, to get you to whatever goals and dreams that you have with your money, your long-term planning.
Well, that's awesome. So as we talk about what has happened this past week, what's going into next week, and a couple of different points that you want to make sure that we all know, because you're also giving us an education on the show too, which I really appreciate, the free, not advice, but the free education that you're providing to all of us. I'll make sure that we have information scrolling at the bottom for anybody that would like to contact you, and your email address and your website and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about what happened this week. I have to say, I'm not as educated, which I'm never very financially educated. You are helping me. I'm still in crawling stages, but I've been a moth to a flame with this whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I haven't been watching. I've heard that we closed down again, but what has happened this week?
This has been a horrible week. Just given news and then some corporate earnings that really drug the market down. I would love to blame the whole market sell-off on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I can't do that, but you're right. I've been like that too, just watching that too. Just to kind of, I guess, sort of set this up so people sort of understand kind of the gravity of kind of where we're at in the market right now. And again, I get excited about downtimes like this because I'm looking for opportunity for long term. So I don't want people to get panicked or anything like that. That is the worst thing to do. Never get that way. But if we go back and look historically at times in our lifetime that we could remember where the markets were terribly bad and the job market was bad and the economy just sucked. We go back to when the tech bubble burst right at 2000. You remember coming out of the 90s, and there were so many .com companies. And then there were so many that went public, and none of them had any earnings. A lot of them went public and really didn't even make anything. So a lot of people thought, hey, another .com, everybody's making money in these, and they just throw money in, not understanding anything about a company's balance sheets, what they do, what their long-term goals are, who the management teams were, any of this stuff. So there was a huge sell-off. Dot-coms, they called them dot bombs at that point. There was a huge market sell-off. And then 9/11 happened after that. That didn't make anything any easier on anyone, Elizabeth. So given that, a few years later, if you remember, the housing market and the financial sector, everybody said the financial sector is collapsing. And this was back in 2008 and 2009. It was a very scary time. A lot of people lost their homes. Unemployment skyrocketed. Everyone panicked. And, it changed administrations, like political parties changed in control because of people's panic. And back then was such a terrible time, and people still remember that. So if you look back to what April has done this month on the NASDAQ, which is the tech-heavy index that people follow, you have the S&P, the Dow Jones, and then the NASDAQ. Those are the three indexes you see. Year for that 1 month, the NASDAQ was down 13%. That is huge. That is the worst month that the NASDAQ has had since 2008 in comparison. So that kind of gives you an idea of like how panicked people are with the selling. The stock market sold off over 900 points on the Dow Jones on Friday. So a couple of things in the news that hit this week, other than Elon Musk and Twitter and all that talk. And then before that, we had Netflix. They didn't hit their numbers on any of this. Well, you had some big hitters out there. Amazon lost a few billion on the quarter. So that was a big red flag for a lot of people. If Amazon's not making money, Walmart's not making money, nobody's doing well. That's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. The red flags go up for people. So other corporate earnings came out, and some of the tech heavy ones, and they weren't so good either. Apple's been dragged down heavy this week. Amazon, really all the tech names and the big company names too. A lot of things are dragged down this week. On Wednesday, we had another horrible economic report. We were looking at what the first quarter GDP was, and that's a measure of economic growth. And economists were expecting about 1% growth, which sucks, and it's pretty anemic. You want better than that, especially coming out of a pandemic. But with inflation roaring, they tamped those numbers back, I think, initially from what was going to be 2.5% down to 1%. So the actual number came out, and the economy actually contracted. We were negative 1.4%. So if you want to define a recession, that's 2 quarters back to back with negative growth.
Right.
Get another surprise number in the second quarter. Well, we are officially in a recession. But that's so a lot of people are panicked, a lot of panic selling, a huge volume. And, so that was really what happened this week. It took a lot of nervous investors and shook them out. Now, so people understand, just like back in 2008, I think this is the most difficult trading environment since 9/11. And I was having that discussion with some people earlier this week. And but then somebody would ask me, well, what about when the housing market collapsed and all those banks went under? We lost Lehman Brothers, we lost Bear Stearns back in 2008 and 2009. If you remember when all that happened, Wachovia was suddenly gone. Countrywide, the real estate, they were gone. All these big institutions wiped out.
Yes,
and their competitors bought them on pennies on the dollar. And they were saying, wasn't that even worse? There was a lot of structural problems in the financial sector. They had to correct them. But I actually didn't think that was nearly as bad as the 9/11 because there was so much terror fear.
Right.
You never knew when the next hit was coming. But we saw a problem. We could address that, in which we did. Back then, I was so excited for the clients that I had. We had cash. I was in buying anything and everything back in 2008 and 2009 because I knew in about 5 years, everything was going to be skyrocketed up and we're going to be coming out of this. And then we've seen what happened over the next 10 years, how the market has performed since 2008, 2009. Back then, you could almost throw a dart, a list of stocks and buy one. This has probably been a very difficult trading environment because of the inflation factor. But just so people don't realize, I don't want people panicking. Friday, I was in buying. So for clients that had cash, I was in there buying this week. Because as nervous as it kind of makes you, you have to have that long-term approach and realize an opportunity that's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like your last guest was talking about, I guess just kind of fear and anxiety when you're running your business. Same thing when you're running your portfolio. When everyone's fearful, and that panic, everybody's hitting that panic button,
Mm-hmm.
that everything good goes on sale. So people, I guess now you have to kind of look at your strategy and how you're going to invest during a bear market, which will eventually turn around with inflation and kind of factoring all these things in. It just, unlike 2008 and 09, when I thought you could just buy almost anything, now you have to be a little bit more picky, which is why it's a more difficult trading environment than before.
So you just mentioned about how, it really shook out some of those nervous investors. But what about on the other side of that, on profit loss, as far as people canceling subscriptions? They're just not using the goods and services that they were before for various reasons. A lot of people, it's kind of coming into mainstream news right now about stocking up on food. Make sure that you have a pantry, a separate extra pantry for those items that maybe we'll just go without for 6 months at a time or more.
Yeah.
Are you noticing that people are spending in different ways? I've found that looking at the market, as novice as I am, you can kind of see where the crowds are going, and it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just go hang out at a Walmart or a grocery store, and you can see where people are spending their money. Even people are shifting their spending on different items on Amazon, of all places. And I've read articles about that. But yeah, people are going to be shifting their spending. They're going to be cutting back because they always say the stock market is forward looking. Well, so is Main Street. Main Street can see this coming a mile away. So that's why I don't. When people said they were surprised at that GDP number, I mean, I sort of was too, but I sort of wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've talked about this on the show prior with inflation, that people are going to have to cut back on things and change the way they spend. And yeah, people are cutting back on Netflix, or cutting back on their HBO and Showtime subscriptions. There's some things that are sticky, like Prime. For whatever reason, Amazon Prime, even when they raised their rates, they only lost maybe 2 or 3% of their subscribers. Mm-hmm. So that means there's some things people don't go without, like their iPhones and their things like that. But yeah, people are starting to change, and we're going to see a lot of supply chain issues. And I hate to say it this way, but if China just wasn't handling their COVID issue in such a stupid way, that the supply chain issue would have worked itself out by now. But they're talking about shutting down Beijing, the biggest city in China, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest, port, I guess, for shipping goods in the world, because so much stuff is made there. Now we see our companies who are moving their supply chains back to the States or other areas, which is smart. But it'd been nice if it was done 5 years ago.
Well, and I heard that Shanghai was the largest port coming out of Asia. Is that correct?
That's probably correct. I know Beijing was pretty big, but Shanghai is huge. And there's
and Shanghai is shuttered right now.
Yeah, and but you kind of hear rumblings from different parts of, like, political pundits, that they're hearing in China that the Communist Party is kind of getting a little tired of the way that their president is handling it, which he's supposed to be president for life until they pull him out of there, I guess. But this is done in such a backwards and ignorant way. They had their own vaccines, mm-hmm. and they didn't want anything to do with ours, and those vaccines proved to be very ineffective. So if they would just take some of our Moderna or J&J or something, Pfizer, they could kind of get back to a normal. They're having this zero tolerance on COVID, and one whole section of Shanghai, they had 2 cases, and they shut the entire section of the city down. But make no mistake, there are a lot of people rumbling that there are people starving over there. Yeah. So as we see that are locked in their homes and can't go out anywhere. They're not getting food delivered.
Right.
And as we see things that are changing around the world, like we talked before about the wheat and grain and corn that was grown in Ukraine and parts of Russia, and now that's all bottled up, and all the fertilizer, which is impacting our farmers here, that comes from over there. We probably won't have food shortages, like big food shortages in America. We'll just pay more for it. I worry about a lot of third world countries that can't pay more for it, that are going to suffer. They'll be the ones to suffer the most. But I get so frustrated about it. And this was sort of a rant I went on a podcast a couple of days ago, that there's no reason whatsoever in this world to have a famine or food shortages unless it's engineered, unless there's stupid things that people are doing that know it's going to cause that, because the results. This is going to happen when you do certain things. And yeah, here we have leaders in various parts of the world, and we don't have strong enough leadership in the West that's screaming out about it, So I don't know. It's kind of a tough situation.
It is a very tough situation. And we have parts of the United States here. So you're in Virginia. There are sections of West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, those areas, and then out west in New Mexico and this, that, and the other, where really true poverty is happening and people are hungry in our own country. And I have to say, it's very frustrating when I turned on the news this past week and they were reporting the numbers of dollars, albeit misused, but the billions and billions that have gone to certain states, and they've implemented it into changing their curriculum in some of the schools. Billions upon billions of dollars. If that could just be applied to something that's actually, people are going to disagree with me, but real, like solving hunger, making sure that we don't have any children or families in this country that are really hungry. I mean, I worked with a school out in Nevada where kids were taking home condiment packages because they were eating condiments over the weekend just to not starve, and running back to school. These were elementary school kids running back to school for the meals.
Yeah. Now, I told you both my sisters were in school teachers. And, my sister Tammy, I think one of the things she's concerned about is, you see these kids that need the school lunches and things like that, and they send things home with them over the weekend sometimes when nonprofits or charities are able to help out. But imagine going home all summer, and that was one of her biggest worries, is what some of those children are doing over the summer for food, because they relied on school so much during the spring and fall.
That's a big, that's a big worry. And with that school, they had 97% of the enrolled students were homeless. 97% of their students, they had kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. And they said our hardest month here is, I think they got out early June, was the month of May. That's when students would just be crying. And they're like, the last day of school, the whole school is crying. It's all tears because the kids didn't know what they were going to do. They didn't know how they were going to eat. And it's a very unfortunate situation. It's right outside of Las Vegas. So you have everything. You have poverty, you have absent parents, you have kids that are truly homeless at that age and they're trying to take care of siblings with each other, this, that, and the other. But don't mean to railroad the show here. We're talking about finances and what has happened in this past week. And you were saying a major sell-off. It shook out a lot of the shaky investors, the nervous investors. And you mentioned a bear market. Can you give us a definition? What is the difference between a bear and a bull market?
Yeah. A bull market is when the market is trending upwards. All your indexes are trending upwards. And, those are more of your economic times of economic growth. Now any given, you can be in a bull market and have down days, but the trend is upward. Now there's, I think a lot of people get confused between two things. One is called a market correction, and the other is called a bear market. A market correction is when an index like the S&P 500 falls 10% or more from a recent high. And right now, year to date, it's down almost 12.5, 13%. That would be a correction. Now, when you get to a bear market, like we're talking about the NASDAQ, that is a market, an index that is down over 20% from a recent high.
Okay.
So there's a difference. So you have one index that's trending down. It's the S&P, the broader index as it is. And then of course the technology sector, the higher multiples, as I call them, the more, I guess tech and biotech, all those sectors, those that trade in the NASDAQ, those are down over 20. So that's where they've taken a big beating. And that's why the Dow Jones goes down so much, because part of those indexes, you're looking at things like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft. But Microsoft has held up fairly well. But there is a difference. And so when you get into a bear market, that's when you start seeing a lot of panic selling. And that's sort of what we've seen this week. Now, who knows how long it goes on? It sucks to see it, because if you don't have any cash available to put to work, then you just have to hold on and ride it out, and that's okay. I mean, if some people have the stomach for that, and that's fine. I have the stomach for it, and I always caution my clients to have the stomach for it, because it will happen from time to time. But this at this point, anybody that has money, if you're not in there buying on days like this, I know you have these pundits on TV that'll argue and confuse people, like I wouldn't do it now, or I would do it, wait a week or two, or I don't know if the market's going to be in 2 weeks. Do you? And I know those guys don't either. Anybody that says they do, they're full of crap. I don't know any other way of saying it. So there's this thing said, never catch a falling knife. You've heard that phrase. Well, that's kind of like a chart going straight down. Well, why would you guess where a bottom is? I don't know where a bottom is. It can turn on a dime and start going back up. And we've seen that coming out of the COVID. That market, that bear market that came out of COVID, when everything shut down and the market dropped 30%,
right?
Something crazy like that. But then when you look at the chart, it's like when everything started opening back up and the optimism came back in, buyers are like, yeah, we're coming back. Everybody, even though the numbers hadn't changed, the quarterly earnings hadn't gotten any better because everything was closed, the optimism, and it just shot straight back up. And that's kind of where we traded for a while until, just these lockdowns, the inflation, and things like that kick in, and then the bad earnings. The inflation is never going to help anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tax on poor people when you think about it. Those are the people who are hurt the most. And again, we talk about those poor children out there going home for the summer. And what are their parents going to do now? I mean, they barely get by as it is, if they do at all. And now everything is so much more. So do you think they're going to, a lot of them, you said, don't even really have parents that take care of them. So,
I have no idea. And when I was just touching on that one more time, it's an interesting situation. So it's right outside of Las Vegas. And I was talking to one of the general managers of a hotel saying, are you able to sponsor the kids in this school? And they're like, well, which school? There's 13 of them or more in that same situation. We have some of them we can't get to because it's between two gangs. So what are we going to do? You can't send food there. You can't send anybody there that hasn't already been initiated as non-threat. It's real. We could get into that in a whole different podcast. But so, okay. All right. So thank you for that definition. So bull market trends upwards. Market correction is when the index falls 10% or more from a recent high, and a bear market trends downwards. So even though it looks like we're still in the market correction, are you foreseeing that this is definitely going to be a bear market for a while?
It's kind of tough to say, because we may be dealing with this, because there's an old saying, sell in May and go away. Okay. That's because during the summer months, trading volumes usually drop, and the markets, they may sell off. And then people, when they come back from their vacations and school starts back up, people start thinking more of their investment, their retirement again. But I guess people, if they want out, they'll jump out, this nervous money. So that kind of creates a trend, like a snowball effect, until there's enough momentum on the upside. People that are like smart money, like the people that are buying right now, when people are selling off 900 points, for every person selling, there's a buyer. But there's more sellers than are buyers, which is why the price keeps going down of a stock, or the index goes down. But keep in mind there are buyers, and those that are buying right now is the smart money. Institutions are jumping in there buying. Mutual funds are jumping in there buying when they don't have to liquidate to send cash for people liquidating. All
Mhm.
right, and then and so you have these big power players like Warren Buffett that's stepping in there buying. Today they're actually meeting. Berkshire Hathaway is having their weekend meeting in Omaha, Nebraska, and I bet he's saying the same boring cliche thing. When stocks are down like this and everybody's fearful, it's time to buy. And we just found out that Berkshire Hathaway took a huge stake in Chevron,
Hmm.
because once they get a certain amount in there, they have to report it publicly. So they took a huge jump into the oil sector. Now I just found that out yesterday, I think, or the day before.
Mhm.
So it's just one of these times where even if we have a few months and people just kind of have to ride out that pain or put more money to work, because it's during a down market, there's a strategy that people can use called dollar cost averaging
Mhm.
to bring their average cost down. If you're an investor, remember, you haven't lost a dime until you sell something. And if you think you bought something and long term that price is going up, why would you sell it just because everybody's a little afraid?
Right.
You know, um, I don't know where the market's going in 6 months, but in 6 years, I'm pretty confident we're going to be well above where we're at.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I'm looking it up right now. Because I was going to ask you, but I wanted to see if maybe I could find something online. So what closed up this week?
there was some, see, I'm trying to think what actually closed up this week because it's tough to pick one.
It
Um,
seems like it. I can't find anything.
just on a day-to-day basis, some things went up. Like on Friday, I know,
There we go.
I think Chevron, some of the oil companies actually went up a little bit on Friday. Some of the things that are actually holding up or actually advancing, like Altria Group is a company I've mentioned many times. Used to be called Philip Morris.
Mhm.
They were up actually on the week, I think. So people are looking, as far as I guess, ways to play defense. They're jumping into companies that I guess that focus on quality and earnings. So I mean those are the things, companies that make things,
Mhm.
have a cash flow and have pricing power. And Altria Group is a perfect example of that. Now, how high it goes, who knows, or if it's going to sell off at some point. Because keep in mind, it's come up from like $45. So if it's sitting at like 55 or 56 right now, there might be people out there thinking, well, I'm going to take some gains on this. I'm going to take my gains while I have it. But when they do that, if they have other losing positions, it just makes their portfolio look that much worse. But it gives them free cash, to put somewhere else if they want.
So I did go back to CNN Business like we did last week, and I found a couple of different things here. So Equifax, Fidelity is up 8 points. Equifax is up 9 points. And then you look down here, the finance sector is up 18, energy, minerals, transportation. Interesting. So all of those are up from this week, and it looks like it's a very short list.
Yeah. And yeah, they run a list on there on the main page, which is like from day to day, like the top movers. And well, there's a company, it's called, gosh, they were pretty big on Friday. Mohawk Industries. Uh,
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
think they were up, because that's when I was following. They were up like $10 or something on Friday.
Wow.
But then again, Apple sold off $5.50 on Friday, even though they've sold to a low. But see, like something like Mohawk, and again, this is not, don't anybody take this as specific advice unless the usual disclaimer.
Mhm.
But they manufacture like flooring things, things for your home. What is it? There's another. I think they have a sub company called. Uh, North America Flooring or something like that. But anyway, they do a lot of tile, ceramic tile, porcelain, stone, natural stone, things like that. Like, so I know a company, it always reminds me of them because I drive by this company. It's a local that lays stone down for flooring and outdoor stuff. So, but yeah, that company was up, but was it up on the week? I don't know. I'd have to.
Yeah, I've got it up live here. Let's see what it looks like on the week. 1 day, 5 days. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it certainly did. It took a decent spike on the 29th and seemed to hold it.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a quote on it now too. Year to date, they're down 22.5% though. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to kind of look at things and like, well, do I like it at this price? If you liked it when you bought it at the end of last year and it's down 22%, would you like a 20% discount on those shoes or that purse or that house? I mean, when you think about it, so
Yeah.
people assess that and take a look at what their PE is and do they have positive earnings and do they pay a dividend perhaps? So those are some important things to certainly consider.
See, to me, that would have been a sleeper because so they're America Flooring. All of the building costs have just gone through the roof. It's really interesting. Garage doors, of all things, are extremely hard to get a hold of, that they are closing on new homes here in the Atlanta suburbs without garage doors on the homes. They're having to put up faux walls.
Wow. Okay.
Pop out when the garage doors come in because they're just not available. So big builders are like Pulte and so many others are closing without garage doors.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's another area that people are looking at too during times of weakness like this. Where are you going to find value? And some of that's just in just basic real estate. Maybe not in home builders right now, but yeah, just basic real estate and some of those real estate investment trusts that can pay you a 6, 7, 8% dividend yield, which is that's awesome. I'd love to have that. But even those some of those have sold off too, like Annaly Capital, and I think another one was Kimco Realty, things like that. You may be in your business, you may be familiar with some of those. Avalon Bay is another in that area that real estate investment trust that people can look for good dividends. If that's something that they're comfortable with.
So now let's talk about futuristic view. What do you see as the futures in the market for this coming week? I almost don't want to ask anything beyond just a 1 week basis because there's so many different things going on. There's volatility out in the East. There's a war happening that is actually into its second month. I think it's coming up to well into its second month. I believe we're 2 months and 2 weeks coming up this week, which wasn't expected. We had heard grumbling that Putin thought he'd be able to take Ukraine in about 2 or 3 weeks, and that's not happening.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And then we have an administration that just seems to have the reverse Midas touch. So what do you think is going to happen in our future?
Yeah, week from week, it's hard to tell, even from day to day, but I don't see the volatility index dropping at all. So there's, you can have a bear market bounce. So even if you go into Monday and you get a bounce off of that such a huge sell-off, it wouldn't surprise me, but I almost hope we don't, because I don't like those false encouragement. You know what I mean? In other words, I would rather see, at least until the European markets close, which is usually around 11 o'clock our time or 12. So when they close, you see how they do. If we rally after that, I think that would be a little bit better than rallying early, regardless of what's happening in foreign markets. But could we possibly stabilize? Seeing a rally wouldn't surprise me much this week after what happened this week. But I know this kind of sounds sadistic to say, but everybody's pricing in a 50 basis point hike by the Fed on the next meeting, and we really have to tackle inflation, and we need to sooner rather than later. And there's going to be pain regardless. So if you really want to shake the rest of the nervous investors out of the market, just get a wash sale. Just, get it, set the cup of coffee, sit in the room with the pain, have a cup of coffee, then send it on its way, right? And have the Federal Reserve raise 75 basis points in this next meeting, which people wouldn't expect, 75 in the next one. And then if they want to cool down to quarter point hikes, okay. But that would really shock people that probably are just on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Get in or get out. And, at that point, you can let the bull market run, because the market, I think at that point, the economy, people would be able to see that, hey, we're serious about tackling inflation, regardless of anything else. That is our biggest problem right now. Then of course the supply chain thing, but until we untangle ourselves from China, we're going to have issues that companies are slowly solve for themselves. But, if we approach it more from a national point of view with the economic policy, it would certainly help a lot. But I don't see this administration doing that either. But if the Fed would just do maybe that, it would cause a mass sell-off. But maybe that's something we need just to get that over with and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would much rather get inflation over with and then have the next bull run than to sit and play footsie with it for the next 12 months with so much volatility, and that people can't wrap their head around it. And there's so much fatigue after that with investors. If you drag through like the Carter years all over again and the first 2 years of Reagan, I don't think we're the same kind of toughness as maybe they were back then.
Mm-hmm.
To tolerate these things.
Now, I have a question for you. With the inflation that we're seeing, some supply chain issues that we're seeing, and what's happening at our border. So we have had a huge influx of especially illegal immigration into this country. We have Title 42 that is still on the fence as to exactly what they're going to do with that. If the projections are correct and we are, let's just call it infiltrated with much, much larger mass of people coming into this country, what happens to it's very obvious with our supply what happens, but what about inflation to cover people that are all indigent?
Well, you'd see a lot of illegal hiring going on because let's face it. I mean, I understand why people cross this border and come over here.
Yeah, me too.
I totally get it. I'm all for immigration, but legal immigration. And these people, I certainly want to help them. But I think we better serve going to their countries and helping them clear up their corruption and shore up their economies so they don't have to walk 2,000 miles and risk life and limb and their children. But that's certainly going to undercut everybody else. But we have such low unemployment right now. It'd take a little while probably for that number to show a big impact. But you're going to have a black market labor system. But how fair is it when you're going to be paying people that are working twice as hard for less than a living wage?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's kind of evil. They do take advantage of those folks that come across the border. And you'll see a lot of crime skyrocketing because people come across the border for different reasons. And it'll put a tax burden on our healthcare and education system. So, this is probably unpopular for me to say, but this was part of my rant a couple of days ago. With inflation the way it is, our government needs to really be careful how they spend money. So they just passed a $33 billion bill to send to Ukraine. And I understand wanting to help those folks. But they are also a very corrupt country. They have just as many corrupt oligarchs as Russia does. So why don't we take their money first, their billions first, and give back into the system there in Ukraine? We have that ability. Because we're doing it to the Russian oligarchs all over the globe. We should do it to some of those criminal oligarchs in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Because they do a lot of human trafficking, money laundering, and drug movement globally. Mm-hmm. And that is a hub in the world for human trafficking. So before we spend $33 billion, I mean, we could just say that, hey, if you can make it to Afghanistan, you can have that $80 billion worth of military equipment we left behind. That's one thing. But, if that $33 billion, how much good could those folks use it down in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, along that border? How can the people in Laredo spend that money? more wisely than our own government. So if we're going to run up inflation more by passing $33 billion spending bills with 10% inflation, let's be smart where we send it. Now,
Mhm.
I mean, I know that's unpopular, and at least everybody's like, "Oh, you don't want to help the Ukrainians." Yeah, I do. I hate seeing that, but we have battles to fight here too, and inflation is one of them because every person you mentioned in those poor communities, whether it's in West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Central Appalachia, out there in Nevada and New Mexico, I mean, they need help. So we can spend this money more wisely. That's my political rant of the day, but um, yeah, that's one of the things that bother me. They're going to run up more inflation with these bills, and you're not helping the people who you're kicking in the teeth here with that inflation.
Right. And the one of the many beauties of United States citizens and the United States is that we are very caring. We are very giving. We
Yeah,
want to give, but so many times our administration, not just this one, but definitely this one, the focus is like, woohoo, there goes a bird. Like there's no focus, there's no smart money moves within this administration to where it's like, oh, we have to fix this. They're all good. They're 100% good. It's all great. We're going to throw money at it.
yeah,
And then when that doesn't work, well, we're going to throw more money at it. But what is your plan? What is the system behind you deciding to throw money at it? And
yeah.
that's getting very intolerable.
It really is. I mean, and this has been going on our entire lives because our politicians and I'm almost of a mind. Actually, I want to email or call my congressman's office, who I don't really have a beef with the way he votes per se, but it because I agree with a lot of his point of view. But if you're going to spend 33 billion, if you vote yes on a bill like that to go to Ukraine, then I want to see an equal bill on to go toward U.S. veterans. Every veteran of our wars who has lost a limb, I'm a giving person, and I know people don't like handouts, and I don't like giving them either with tax dollars. But
Right.
every veteran that lost a limb, they should have their mortgage paid for. You know how far that $33 billion would go to help veterans in those situations?
Oh,
I'm
oh,
just saying, so where's your priority? Do you care about America or do you care about everything else in your power
yeah.
and your and and those are the people that fought for us. Those are the people that bled and died, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. And yeah, let's next time you pass a $33 billion bill, let's make sure we pay off veteran mortgages who wounded in battle.
I agree with you. I personally, and I'm not advising anybody to donate to any specific charity, but personally, we give to Tunnel to Towers for that exact reason. It's our civil workers, it's our military members, and that's exactly what they do. They pay off the mortgage, help to modify a house. If hindsight's always 2020. And when I was younger, and I saw some of these 18-year-old people, because they weren't kids to me at that time, going off to the military. Well, salute you. Thank you. Like, that's wonderful. But now I'm nowhere near 18. And I'm like, oh my God, those are children. They're babies.
Yeah,
And they're going to go fight for our freedom, which has to be fought for. And I agree with you. I think that has to be done. We must take care of our civil servants, our police, our fire, our military members. They're the ones that really hold up this country because, and if I can get on my soapbox, if we take a look at what the administration's doing, they're not doing it.
no,
So it's kind of coming to the point to where we have to do it state by state on our own.
yeah, and you see a lot of states who are actually pooling money together to go help places in Arizona and Texas finish building a border wall in places where they need it most, where a lot of criminals and drugs. They found so much fentanyl coming across the border that it was enough to kill every American,
Yeah.
and that's just this year. That's dangerous, and they're lacing marijuana with it. So when you're buying these drugs from your local dealer, if you're not going to a dispensary to buy this stuff, you don't know what you're smoking. Because I've heard of kids in colleges around here who have smoked marijuana that was laced with fentanyl,
Yeah.
and and That's scary and sad. So first of all, kids, don't do drugs.
No, exactly. I had to have a conversation with my daughter, and because she had a vape pen with CBD in it, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And but I told her, I said, listen, spring break is coming up. You're going to see a lot of this at spring break. There's going to be accidental overdoses and stuff because fentanyl seems to be in everything. This is a terrorist attack against us
Yeah,
for the singular purpose of killing people. This isn't for a high. This isn't for fun. This isn't for recreation. It's lethal amounts. So it's
yeah,
for one purpose. It's to kill United States citizens and children, kids
yeah,
that are the ones that, they go to spring break, they want to smoke some marijuana, they go buy cocaine or whatever they do, and it's got fentanyl in it. It's like, just don't
yeah.
buy
And
it.
that stuff comes from China. That's where fentanyl comes from. Hey, before I forget, I mentioned earlier dollar cost averaging when people buy. So you don't know where the bottom is. I don't know where the bottom is. No one does. If they say they do, they're, like I said, full of crap. But dollar cost averaging is to say you buy something at $10. You bought a stock at $10. You like it at 10. And then, of course, we had a sell off this week. And now it's like, well, that thing's $8. I'm 20% down. This sucks. And you think, oh, maybe I should get out. No, you don't lose anything till you sell. If you liked it at $10 and it's at $8 now, buy another 100 shares at 8. So now you have 200 shares. And what was your average cost? $9. You don't need your whole investment to go back up to $10 to make money now. And if it drops down a little bit more, buy more if you like that. So that's what's bringing your average cost down, your cost basis, as that's referred to. And when, so you have more shares now to work with at a cheaper price, so that when the market does turn around, if you just held on to that original amount and had 100 shares, are you better off if you had 300 at an average of $7 when the market turns around? Because instead of just 100 shares at $10, because now you have to wait. You see, it's almost like a rocket ship. It's like adding extra fuel to a rocket ship, so that when the market does turn around and that stock or that fund goes up, you see it take off much more quickly because you have more shares now. That's great. That's the importance of dollar cost averaging down. That's a strategy a lot of people use when they put money in their IRAs. They can maybe put $1,000 in, and then they want to do 200 a month, or 100 a month, or whatever they want to do, and they just buy into their mutual fund. And that way you get an average price and not just one price. So you get an average lower price if the markets are going down. Now, if you're buying in when the markets go up, which I always encourage people to continue to buy on a regular basis. I love owning things, and I love seeing clients own things too. This is great. So, just keep in mind that when you're buying going up, you're buying at a little higher average price, but you're still getting an average price and not a peak price. So
Interesting. So you must have a lot of people call and they're panicked because they don't understand that equation.
Me personally, no, because I have that discussion with clients. I try to have that discussion early on. So one of the things I always generally ask, and this is something we brought up on the show before, is how comfortable are you if the market were to drop 20%? Are you going to get scared and run, or are you going to, or do you know that, hey, like we know, hindsight tells us all the time that the best move is to put more in if you have it.
Mm-hmm.
I try to have that discussion. So I haven't had any clients panic yet. Now I have a couple I'll call and to say, hey, how you doing? Yeah, we're on it. I see it's happening, and I'm going to put a little bit more money to work for you today. So I like what we bought, so we're going to buy it on sale, and just kind of remind them when they're a little nervous. But that's not always an easy call to make. Like prospective clients, I'll call them and see how they're doing on a 900-point day that's down. But and no one's they're never really happy. But I know, whoever they're working with is not calling them. So
I have a personal question for you as far as being a financial advisor through Vista Front Partners. Who do you rely on to gain even more knowledge than what you have? What sources do you go to that you find feed you really well?
Well, I read voraciously. I read all kinds of new books that come out on investing. Books that, like, I have a library. Like, my biggest problem here in the house is I don't have enough books. I don't have enough bookshelves. Like I have books stacked up on things because I don't have enough bookshelves. That's a great problem to have. So I tend to read a lot of that. I'll um, just for compliance purposes. I know as a business owner, and especially in this business, I'm required to keep up to date with a lot of new laws and regulations. So I tend to go to for that purpose, like websites that specialize in compliance. And at some point, I'll actually hire a compliance company. Once I get so busy, I can't juggle everything. That will be able to put little white sheets together for me. And I
Mhm.
subscribe to a lot of mailing lists of companies like this that'll keep things up to date for you, and I'll get little emails and so forth. So I do that, and then of course I still have friends at my old firms that I worked with, and I'll touch base with them from time to time to see how they're doing, and hey, what's new on your radar? And you'd be surprised how much big national firms like Schwab, for example, how much information is on those websites that if you can't find it, I mean, you can just search in their field and something will pop up.
Mm.
Um, for example, another thing I try to keep an eye on is because of inflation. If you there's a website I go to, uh, treasurydirect.gov, and
Mhm.
that's the Treasury Department. Because I don't know if you've heard this week, a lot of people are talking about I bonds, so that came up a lot this week. And people are like, I know people are watching, like, what the heck is an I bond? Well, an I bond, it's sort of like, those, you have treasuries that you can buy, and you have treasury inflation protected securities. They call them TIPS. So they adjust on a quarterly basis based on past inflation. Well, I bonds are a little different. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. I think I'm going to, but I'm going to get off camera if I sneeze.
Okay.
I'm not going to sneeze. I'm not going to sneeze. Okay. Um, but an I bond actually it's a savings bond that earns interest by it's combining a fixed rate and an inflation rate. So people, I heard on TV this week, some guy was like, "Hey, if you really want to run away from inflation and get around it, go to I bonds." And I bonds right now, I think he quoted it wrong because somebody had said to me, "It's like, can you really get 10% on an I bond?" I'm like, I doubt it, but I'll look. But it's actually 7.12% on an I bond, and the only place you can get them is at the Treasury Department. I can't sell them or offer them to anybody through my platform. You have to go to Treasury, treasurydirect.gov to buy those. But so that's out there if somebody wants to hold on to those. Um, but there's some tax considerations because it's like state and local tax free, but you still have federal taxes you have to pay on them. And so they adjust based on it's current CPIs, which so the calculation they use is so much better. But there's only a certain amount you can buy. I think there's a maximum amount. I think it's like 10,000. And if I'm correct, like if you have a tax return, you can add I think maybe 5,000 in on that too. So 15,000 will be your max. But you
Okay.
can buy them for as little as $25, or maybe it's 50. No. If you buy them electronically, it's 25. If you get the paper certificate, it's 50. I'm trying to remember that from when I worked at Fidelity on the bond desk there, when people would call and ask these questions. But so that's certainly something people can look at if they just kind of want to altogether have money, they just want to avoid inflation and not really be in the market. That's one thing they can look at.
So that's interesting. So in a volatile market, bonds are a good option
Uh, well, with inflation, no.
with inflation. Okay.
Yeah, but if you were just looking specifically for inflation, because I haven't found a bond I've liked in 3 years. I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, you can, if you look out for the only thing that I've liked have been the lower rated bonds. If you're looking for like a AAA rated bond with insurance on it,
Mhm.
you're not gonna get much. And even if you go out 10 years, you're lucky to get 3%.
Okay, right.
The only kind of bonds, and I still like that I would look at right now. This is just me personally. So it's not for anybody else's portfolio, but those mutual funds that are high yield, they pay monthly interest, and of course you can just reinvest that interest back into the fund and still grow it over time. But even right now, you're probably seeing taking a little bit of a beating on those. But again, you accumulate those shares over a bear market, and when those funds turn around, you're going to do really, really well long term obviously. So that's something to consider. Hey, one thing I probably feel like I should mention since I brought up I bonds, and this is like really kind of trying to tax my memory here, but there are EE bonds, and I don't know if anybody's heard of those.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
It's kind of like an I bond. It's called Series EE, and there's a little bit of a difference between I bonds and those. They do the same thing. Like they have a fixed rate for the life of the bond, right? But I bonds will they'll adjust. Okay, so the EE bonds is still kind of sort of for that. But if you're really solely just looking to get around inflation, I bonds would be the option. But EE bonds, the main difference there is that they have a guarantee on them, that a guaranteed return that doubles your investment if you hold it for 20 years. But there's no guarantee on something like that with I bonds. And there's a maximum purchase of like 10,000 on that too, but you can't. Like the I bonds will give you the extra 5,000 on a tax return if it's tax return money, but EE bonds don't. Now the thing about so that's kind of why people would look at EE bonds if they're going to hold them, if they know they're holding them for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have to at least hold them for, I think, one. You can't sell it, either one of them. You have to hold them at least one, and then it's kind of like cashing out a CD and taking a penalty. So between 1 and 5 years, you lose interest payments if you cash it out between 1 and 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime after 5 years, you get all your interest payments and just whatever the value is.
So I have a question here. Pam is asking, aren't EE bonds what they used to call U.S. savings bond?
Yeah, they're very similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah. It's, if you go to treasury.gov, they'll probably have them listed under that, probably. But yeah, it's so you can buy them. Like that's something your grandma might have, like, here's $50 bond. And then when you go to cash them, turn 18, it's probably worth $51. Those kind of things. With the way rates have been. But yeah, but if you hold them like EE bonds, but if you think about that, 20 years, that's kind of nice if you want to double your money. But if we're looking at that rule of 72 that we had talked about before, like if you made 10% a year, you double your money every 7 years. So wouldn't you rather like be in an average, even get an average mutual fund and double your money every 7 years than waiting to double your money? So it's just a matter of safety and like how safe you want to be with that particular money.
See, this, in my opinion, this EE bond where it maxes out at 30 years. So I'm assuming there's no more potential earnings after 30 years. It's kind of like a baby gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get $100 or whatever in an EE bond and you give it to them as a baby gift because they're not going to be using it for 20 years, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, I noticed somebody left a comment here. Ralph Owens, thanks for the comment. Warren Buffett owns Pilot and Flying J truck stops, and they have been in oil. That's true. That's very true. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's. I know that the Berkshire Hathaway really hadn't taken a big stance on anything here in recent years, and that's everybody listens to Warren Buffett when he talks, So, but I'm sure today at the Omaha conference, he's just telling people the same thing, like, hey, dollar cost average down, and keep buying, and it's good to own things.
It is. So, all right, before I let you go, what else have you been watching? Anything piquing your interest in the news cycle? What else have you seen this week?
You know what? I have been on Twitter seeing how many politicians have been trolling Elon Musk. AOC chimed in.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that, but she made some smart aleck comment about people bullying and all this stuff. And he's like, and he responded back, "Oh, please be nice. I'm shy." It was so funny. Like, just treating everything with like kid gloves and humor. Anybody that's just like clapping back at him. I think it's kind of funny. So that's kind of been a little bit of my entertainment. And yeah, for all the good pros and cons of Twitter, I get so much breaking news on Twitter. It is ridiculous. I'll hear something on Twitter and then I'll hear it on the news 2 days later. So it's okay with me. I'll keep it for that purpose alone.
I noticed that things were very, very quiet on Facebook and Instagram, not for my own scrolling purposes, but for advertising purposes, marketing purposes. The eyeballs are not there this past week. And yet it seems like a lot of people are going back to their Twitter accounts and they're tweeting again. So, I don't have the password saved on my phone, and I tried to get into it and it's like, oh, what's your password? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to go back to the vault where I etch it in the wall every month. I cross it out and put a new one. There's just too many to memorize now. But I thought about actually getting back onto Twitter as well. It's so refreshing just to kind of feel, right? Because nothing has changed yet. It's too soon. But to feel like you're not going to be accosted at every turn, every corner. Not that I say anything offensive, not that I've ever been kicked off of any social media. I've never have. It's just that feeling, it's kind of like the weight lifted off your shoulders, that I'm wondering if people are really in droves back on Twitter. Elon came up in the news again through this Johnny Depp trial that I've got to say is, as much as I really do enjoy Johnny Depp for who he is, it's train wreck TV, right? We have to identify it as what it is. And my mother and I are watching it, and I'm like a moth to a flame to that crap. I just can't. Every time I look away, I'm like, what? Huh? So it's more stuff. And Elon I guess he was dating her at one point.
What? Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was dating Amber in 2016, I believe, while she was still married to Johnny Depp. His name came up multiple times in the trial this week, and he retorted by saying, I am not testifying, because the talk was that he's going to have to now be included into this trial. And then, what's his name? Oh, God. Franco.
Yeah, James Franco.
James Franco came up in the trial as well, because he was having an affair with her while she definitely was married to Johnny Depp. So they said, okay, now he's gonna, because they're talking to, security people and house managers, and it's everybody, his former manager, agents, attorneys, the divorce attorney. They're talking to everybody and anybody. At one point in time, I kid you not, this was a driver, and they were interviewing him, and he got so tired of the same questions, he started vaping, and he was driving his car while they were still asking him questions, because it's remote entry for half of these people. It's the best train wreck TV out there, I promise you.
Oh, this is Springer Part 2. I love it. It's
yeah. So both James Franco and Elon Musk said, no, we're not testifying, like absolutely not. So I guess they would have to subpoena both of them if they really thought that it was viable. But this is supposed to be a 6-week trial, and news on the street right now is that it might actually wrap up next week. She takes the stand on Monday. I think it's just going to be a boohoo tear fest. Like, she's losing her mind.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. And as far as Elon Musk is concerned, at this point, he bought Twitter. Nobody had any problems with Twitter, not the government. They weren't going to, other than bringing Jack Dorsey in to complain a little bit, and bringing I guess that was all just like for public show when they brought Zuckerberg in. Now they're going to bring Elon Musk in, and I guarantee you it'll be like he's going to be treated like a Trump family member. I just see this coming a mile away.
Yeah, and he's interesting. He's quite interesting. I believe he has 6 children. There's a couple of different women in there. Most recently, it's an actress, a younger actress. They're no longer together. They have 2 children, and they've said that they'd like to have more children together, but they're not together. So it's just sort of like he's salting the earth, because let's face it, he could have 20 kids and it's not going to make a financial impact on him whatsoever. It's going to be an impact on the kids, because you can't multiply yourself and actually spend time with these people. But that's where it's at.
That's true. But people can multiply their portfolio if they make smart decisions during bad times. That's just my quick little shot there to remind people.
That was smooth. That was really good. All right. So tell us, how can we contact you? And, email, all that kind of stuff. What you got?
VistaFrontPartners.com is our website. There's a contact us button on there that you can just fill in the lines there and send it over to us, and let us know a little bit about you. If you want us to call you, we can do that. My personal email is jc@VistaFrontPartners.com. We're also on Facebook, Vista Front Partners Inc. on Facebook. So look for us there. I do tend to put some videos up maybe once a week, just to talk about just issues, a little maybe a little educational piece to help people out if it's something that can be helpful. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I know it's Saturday, and a lot of people, they don't have time during the week, so I'm actually going to turn my work phone on. And if anybody wants to contact me up till 4 o'clock today, it's 859-750-5881. And if you didn't get that, that's on our main page on VistaFrontPartners.com as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the education and the time. I really appreciate you. And maybe we can get together again next weekend.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, have a great weekend. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
All right, everybody. I love that. I love being able to have a little bit of an education because, like I said, I'm baby stepping through all this stuff. I really did not get a great financial background, like so many people have. So I'm a huge advocate. And if we're going to change any of the curriculum, we have to make sure that we have a good financial curriculum, especially in our high school. Let's start in elementary and work our way up, right? Because that is a huge part of our moves in life, our money moves and our money management. All right, so let's talk about a couple of news stories that were in the news trends of this week. I do have a meteor shower. So, all right, this is the constellation that you would be looking for to be able to see the meteor shower that is coming your way, especially if you're in the southeast of the United States and anywhere further south. So the Bahamas are going to be great. Key West, even all the way down to the very top of South America. You're going to see a wonderful meteor shower between May 4th, May 5th, May 6th. And of course, past the midnight hour in the darkest area. And it is I'm going to type this out. I don't know how to say this. It's ETAAQUARIID. It's that meteor shower. Like I said, I'm just not even going to make a fool of myself going because I can't pronounce it. So that is the meteor shower that we are going to see. You can see up to 20 to 30 meteors per hour. This is going to be a spectacular show. I remember when I was pregnant with my firstborn, it was 1999. She was born in 2000. So 1999 to 2000. It was the end of that year going into the next. And man, it was beautiful for months. I'd see shooting stars and meteor. Oh my gosh. It was absolutely beautiful. So make sure that you take advantage. Have a nice evening. Grab someone that you love and a drink you enjoy imbibing, and just look up into the stars. You're going to be amazed. It's saying here in my story, which I got from Good News Network. Thank you very much, Good News Network. It says the constellation is 170 light years away. That is trillions of miles. And the meteors themselves burn up just 60 miles above the Earth, which is why we're going to be able to see them so brightly. Now, everybody loves stupid criminals, right? And I love stupid criminals. All right, so here's the story. You see here, it's a driver's license, right, that I have pictured. And it's a weird looking driver's license. So let's hear about the story. A UK, United Kingdom driver was arrested for reckless driving and had officers in stitches after producing a license from Legoland. The driver was pursued from Bexley to Isle of Sheppey and arrested for a multitude of offenses last week, according to the tweet by the Kent Police RPU, which apprehended the 21-year-old motorist in February, and this is 2022, following an epic chase. The fiasco began after officers attempted to pull over an Audi A7, nice car, they had observed maneuvering recklessly all over the road near Bexley. Yeah. SWNS reported. However, the driver refused, resulting in a 35-mile chase that took them from southeast London to Kent. They were even forced to call the police helicopter. Eventually, pursuing officers caught up with the knucklehead in Kent after running out of gas, whereupon they found a large stash of marijuana. So, note to all of you, if you have a large bag of marijuana and you happen to have a Legoland driver's license, don't put it in your wallet, because you just never know. All right. Now, the next one that I have pulled up, this is really epic. How many of us have watched these crime shows to where, it's husband and wife, and maybe they get divorced, maybe they don't get divorced, and somebody loses their mind and somebody dies, right? And then you're trying to figure out the whole 48 hours or 20/20 or whatever it is that you're watching. Here it is in real life. 100% no actors, and we are going to take a listen to this mess because it is entitled "Woman Arrested for Murder for Hire to Kill Her Ex-Husband." Here we go.
Michigan State Police say a woman agreed to pay $5,000 plus travel expenses to go out of state to have her ex-husband killed. Only instead she came face to face with an undercover trooper. State police say 51-year-old Wendy Wayne from South Rockwood was arrested Friday after attempting to hire a hitman to kill her ex-husband. They say she contacted a fictitious website called www.rentahitman.com.
Rentahitman.com.
And completed a request form. Instead, police say the owner of the site called them.
I'm very surprised that somebody thought that this website was a true website, that you could do this.
Detectives say an undercover operation in a Monroe County parking lot revealed Wendy was serious, even willing to cover extra cost to travel out of state where her ex-husband lives.
We used a state trooper posing as the hitman, and there was a conversation, and she provided some funds for travels. And at that time, arrest was made.
Arrested for solicitation to commit murder, she was locked up at the Monroe County Jail where she remains. Charged today, she's also accused of using a computer to commit a crime. Police tell us the owner of the site stated he's helped to stop more than 130 murders.
I most definitely think that a life was saved, and doing a news story on this, I'm pretty sure that when this news story gets out, that some other lives might be saved by this.
The case against Wendy Wayne is still open, and Michigan State Police are asking anyone who could have more info to call them right away. Simon Shaquette, 7.
Some lives are saved? So in which way did he mean that exactly? Did he mean that there's a whole bunch of wives that are trying to kill their exes or their currents, and maybe the light bulb will go off and they'll be like, oh, Rent a Hitman is maybe not the best option. Maybe I shouldn't. Or did he mean that, just this guy survived? We don't know. So stupid criminals, if you want to do something really ugly, horrible, and sadistic, and there's a website for that, think twice. All right, that's my advice to you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the news. Have a wonderful weekend. We will be back here next weekend. As always, we are